In regards to our announcement last night regarding the high-altitude surveillance balloon, I'm not going to have much new information to provide other than to say that the North American Aerospace Defense Command continues to monitor it closely. While we won't get into specifics in regards to the exact location, I can tell you that the balloon continues to move eastward and is currently over the center of the continental United States. Again, we currently assess that the balloon does not present a military or physical threat to people on the ground at this time, and we'll continue to monitor and review options. Finally, Secretary Austin will host a bilateral meeting today here in the Pentagon with Australian Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Defense Richard Marles. The Secretary looks forward to discussing bilateral defense cooperation and our mutual security efforts within the Indo-Pacific region and beyond. A full readout of the engagement will post later today to defense.gov. And with that, we'll go ahead and move to your questions. We'll start with AP, Tara Kopp.
Hi, Pat. Thank you for doing this. China has said this is just a weather balloon that has veered off course. Why is the Pentagon convinced that this is a surveillance balloon? And then can you give us a little bit more on the status of the balloon? You said it's in the central U.S. What state? Do you have any guidance for people as they see this balloon, or they're trying to photograph it, or maybe try and interfere with it?
Sure. Thanks, Tara. So first of all, we are aware of the PRC's statement. However, the fact is we know that it's a surveillance balloon, and I'm not going to be able to be more specific than that. We do know that the balloon has violated U.S. airspace and international law, which is unacceptable. And so we've conveyed this directly to the PRC at multiple levels. And in terms of specific locations, I'm not going to be able to go into specific locations, again, other than to say it's moving eastward at this time. Yeah, you had a follow-up?
Well, just a quick follow-up on, as people start to see the balloon, do you have any guidance for, should they try not to interfere, not photograph?
So the balloon is currently assessed to be at about 60,000 feet. So again, well above the range of civilian air traffic, or where civilian air traffic would normally fly. Certainly aware that there are cameras, civilian-owned commercial cameras that could spot this balloon. In terms of guidance to folks, again, this is something that NORAD is closely monitoring. We do assess at this time that it does not pose a physical threat, as I mentioned, to people on the ground. So we'll just leave it at that. Jennifer.
General Ryder, who is controlling this balloon right now?
Again, we know that this is a Chinese balloon, but beyond that, I'm not going to have specifics.
But is it? You say that it's moving eastward and it's over the continental U.S. It's not over Montana anymore. Is the Chinese government controlling the movement of the balloon, or is it just floating with airstreams?
Thanks, Jennifer. So I'm not going to go into any specific intelligence that we may have. Again, we know this is a Chinese balloon and that it has the ability to maneuver, but I'll just leave it at that.
And once it's over a body of water, will you shoot it down?
Again, right now we're monitoring the situation closely, reviewing options, but beyond that, I'm not going to have any additional information. We go to Tony.
One quickie on the balloon. Can you confirm the photos that are out there that this is not the man on the moon and that is the actual balloon?
Thanks, Tony. So certainly aware of photos being posted online. I'm not going to get into the business of confirming whether or not those are, where those photos come from. Again, I can tell you that the U.S. government, NORAD, is monitoring this closely, and we will continue to review options.
How close was the U.S. to was the president to ordering a shoot down of the balloon?
Yeah, so again, I'm not going to get into internal discussions within the White House. Again, right now we assess that there is no threat, a physical threat or military threat to people on the ground. So we're continuing to monitor, and we'll just leave it at that. Thank you. We go to Janie, and then we'll go to Rio.
Thanks, General. Welcome to home. I have two questions. Come on. Okay. In response to Secretary Austin's recent remarks that more U.S. strategic assets will come to the South Korea, North Korea warned of stronger provocations in the near future. What is your comment on this?
Well, it's certainly not surprising given North Korea's track record of making bellicose statements. Again, what we're focused on is on preserving peace, security, and stability in the Indo-Pacific region. And so Secretary Austin's visit was an opportunity to, again, reaffirm our strong and close alliance with the Republic of Korea. And so that will remain our focus, is on working with South Korea and other nations in the region to deter aggression and ensure a free and open Indo-Pacific.
One more. South Korea has announced that it will be test the high-powered monster ballistic missile with nuclear warhead level. This is a defense against North Korea's nuclear warhead. How do you agree this?
I'm sorry, Jane, I missed the first part of your question. Can you repeat that?
South Korea has announced that it will be test a high-powered monster ballistic missile with the nuclear warhead levels. This is the defense against
I don't have anything on that. I'd refer you to the government of South Korea. Thank you. Let me go to Rio, and then I'll come back over here.
Okay, thank you very much. Two questions on the Chinese balloon. So there is a speculation that the Chinese balloon flew over Japanese airspace before reaching the U.S., continental U.S. Can you confirm that?
I've seen those press reports. Again, as we acknowledged in our statement that we posted last night, we have seen this type of balloon activity elsewhere before. But again, I'm not going to get into intelligence, and I'm not going to have any further information to provide.
Secondly, how will this incident affect the Secretary's future engagement with Chinese counterpart to maintain the open lines of the communication?
I think we've been very clear that we're always open to maintaining an open line of communication with the PRC, and in that regard, nothing has changed. Thank you. Let me go to Phil, and then I'll come over to Qasim.
Is the position of the balloon classified?
Phil, right now, what we're not going to do is get into a hour-by-hour location of the balloon. Again, we're monitoring it closely. As I mentioned, right now, it's over the center of the continental United States. That's about as specific as I'm going to get.
But I understand it might be inconvenient, but does the public not have a right to know if the balloon
public
is over
certainly
their state?
has the ability to look up in the sky and see where the balloon is. Thank you. Qasim?
General, you said the balloon is maneuverable. So does that mean that it's not drifting?
So the balloon is maneuverable. Clearly, it's violated U.S. airspace. And again, we've communicated that fact to the PRC.
If possible, can you tell us if the balloon, when it entered the U.S. airspace, has it changed its course in any way?
The balloon has changed its course, which is, again, why we're monitoring it. But that's about as specific as I can get. Thank you. Go to Matt.
So you've said at this point the balloon doesn't pose any risks to citizens. How is it that the U.S. can assess that, given that the balloon is at such an altitude, without actually getting eyes on it up close and assessing the equipment that's on board? And secondly, are there any alternatives being considered to shooting it down? Is there any option to take this balloon out of the sky intact to maybe get a better look at that equipment?
Yeah. So again, this is a surveillance balloon, operating at about 60,000 feet. Clearly, we did a very close assessment in terms of what it's doing. And as I mentioned, military commanders have assessed that there is no physical or military threat to people on the ground. And so in that regard, we'll continue to monitor. In terms of way ahead, we will continue to review options, but I'm not going to have anything further to provide on that. So thank you. Ma'am.
Thank you, Pat. You said that this is violating our airspace, so why not take it down?
Yeah, so, clearly as we assess options and considering the size of the payload on this, looking at the potential for debris and the impact on civilians on the ground or property damage, again, running through the various factors and looking at in terms of does it pose a potential risk to people while in the air. And right now, as I mentioned, we assess that it does not pose a risk to people on the ground as it currently is traversing the continental United States. And so out of an abundance of caution, cognizant of the potential impact to civilians on the ground from a debris field, right now we're going to continue to monitor and review options.